This is
Yeah,
one of the major killers of people and has been for some time.
I think
And
it's the number one killer.
let's just start very basic for people. When we talk about heart disease, cardiovascular disease, a term that comes up here is atherosclerosis. Let's just break
Yep.
that down for people. What is atherosclerosis?
So atherosclerosis, probably, I think the simplest way to describe how it's thought of in standard cardiology is imagine you have an infection, a pus-filled infection on the inside of your artery, right? That infection, if it gets bad enough, I think that the old term used to be a boil, right? The old a boil is like if you can imagine a zit that goes horribly wrong. The boil can becomes inflamed. I mean, that's sort of what makes a boil. A boil is an inflammation process, and the boil can burst. The
Mhm.
atherosclerotic lesion can burst and send stuff out into your bloodstream, which can block blood flow through the heart, causing a heart attack, myocardial infarction.
Mhm.
There are other ways you can have a heart attack. There are non-atherosclerotic heart attacks and blah, blah, blah. But we won't go over that because the majority of it is this atherosclerosis leads to a heart attack process.
Yep. So cardiovascular disease, heart disease, these terms cover there's a lot of different ways for things to go wrong in your cardiovascular system. This is
Yeah,
one of the major killers of people and has been for some time.
I think
And
it's the number one killer.
yeah, and so different forms of heart disease have sort of waxed and waned to different degrees over time, but atherosclerosis makes up a big chunk of this. And so things can
Right.
go wrong in your blood vessels. Um, little bubbles of stuff can form on the edge with plaque and get inflamed and stuff. These things can grow, they can burst, and at a very, very high level, right? This is what we're going to be talking about. How do these things form? What can go wrong? How do they get worse? And then how does that tie into diet? So,
Right.
what are these when people talk about plaques and their arteries getting filled with plaques? What are these plaques? What are they made out of?
They're made out of cholesterol primarily and fats. They have other components in them, dead cells, typically obviously the cells that make up the lining of the uh, artery. Those include endothelial cells, smooth muscle cells. They also typically include a lot of macrophages, right, which are white blood cells. The macrophages have two roles in the body. They obviously protect from infection. They do this. Macrophage, the word means big eater. So they clean things up by ingesting them and digesting them, right? But not only do they do that to bacteria or anything causing an infection in your body, but they will also do that to damaged parts of your body. So
Mhm.
if you fall and you get a scrape, the white blood cells will go there both to eat the bacteria, but also to dispose of damaged tissue so that your body can, heal that wound.
Yep, cleanup crew.
So cleanup crew, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's, and again, I'm going to skip over lots of stuff that's going on here just to move this conversation around because, like, everything we're going to discuss, you could probably spend the rest of your life reading papers about it.
Right, right. Especially this area.
Uh,
This is, because this is such a relevant health issue. There's been a lot of attention. There's a lot of literature that goes back decades on some of this stuff.
so then what happens, typically the first sign of atherosclerosis is what's known as a foam cell. So a foam cell is a macrophage that has ingested so much fat and cholesterol that it basically, the fats and cholesterol, it looks like this little foamy particle, right? I mean, a
Yeah.
macrophage typically looks like an amoeba, if people remember that from high school
Yeah.
science.
It's ingested a
And
lot.
so much so that it basically can die and burst, right? It
Mhm.
goes through a process called necrosis. Now, that's not what's supposed to happen. The
Right.
macrophage is supposed to take up the damaged particles, digest them, maybe take them out of that area of the body so that, they can be cleaned up in liver or wherever
Yeah.
else that happens.
Stuff into smaller pieces, and
Right.
that stuff can be moved elsewhere, used for other purposes. But the macrophage can eat so much so fast, or it somehow malfunctions because it's of what it's eating or whatever, and then it bursts. So it's going to leak incompletely digested stuff that it had begun to be filled with.
And this is what is, you get enough of this happening in the wall of the artery, and you get what's known as gruel, which is a pretty gross way to describe it. And it's the pus, right? I prefer to call it pus because I think that's more accurately describing what it is. And it's a blend of cholesterol, fats, dead cells, dead, you know, uh, undigested components of LDL and other lipoproteins that are in the business of delivering fats and cholesterol around the body and tend to accumulate in these areas.
Mm.
Now, this gets us into the whole why does this happen part of the conversation.